Hello and welcome to Navarra as we prepare for the first of two races this weekend for the FIA GT3 European Championship. It's their third event of the season, and we've had double victories for BMW. We've also had wins for Ferrari and for Audi so far in the series, but it is wide open, let me tell you, between the different manufacturers. There's been a slight adjustment on the balance of performance coming into this event, and it's nice to see that there are 7 different manufacturers represented in the top 8 places on the grid for this first race, and it was pretty much as competitive in the second qualifying session as well. So really looking forward to some close, tight GT3 racing as ever. And there on the outside of the front row is the number 24 Lamborghini Gallardo, which is Nicky Marmelhoff, who'll be starting this, sharing the car with German royalty Albert von Thurn and Taxis, who will be looking forward to getting out later on in the race. It is a 1-hour race. On the pole position next to them is the Ferrari, the black Ferrari 458. So we've got 2 mid-engine cars starting up there on the front row. But interestingly, John, although the mid-engined cars worked well in qualifying, sitting pretty close behind them on the second row, 2 of those front-engine BMWs that have been so strong this season.
Yes, indeed, and the BMW Z4, to me, have been the revelation of this category, because they've come in, they've been competitive, they're reliable, and they're across the board, the 2 teams that are running them, even though they run on competitive and different tyre manufacturers, they are going to be very, very strong indeed.
Yeah, we've got the 2 of them here. We've got Edward Sundstrom on the inside, and this car on the outside is Herbert Voss. Now this is the championship leading car, and Herbert just getting ready to jump on board. So that's the championship leading car, the faster racing by DB Motorsport entry, and next to them is the Need for Speed Team Schubert car of Edward Sundstrom. So 2 BMWs on that second row, and they are very, very fast. But we saw Albert von Thurn and Taxi's car had qualified on the front row. He takes the car over later. So let's go and hear from him now, talking to Hayley Coxon.
Albert, congratulations on pole. It's where you need to be at a race like this, and it's a track for the Lamborghini as well.
It is a track for the Lambo indeed, it was a great qualifying for my partner Nicky. Again, he did a fantastic time, and really got all out of the car, and we're really proud of him. I hope we can make the best of this great quality result.
Great. Thank you, Albert.
They certainly could do with a decent result. They've had pace this season, but they haven't really delivered in terms of many results. They did get a 4th place finish at Algarve in the second race of the day, but they're lying down in 12th place in the championship, so they've got some work to do.
Yeah, I mean, even at Silverstone just a month ago, they looked like they could be on even for a win, and then they got overwhelmed by the BMWs, and in fact, the Lambo did a quick little rotation out at Luffield, and that put pay to any chances of getting onto the podium, let alone winning that particular event.
So there is, as I say, the championship leading car. The fact that it is the championship leader and went so well at Silverstone means that they have a penalty when it comes to the pit stops. They have to sit in the pits for an extra 15 seconds, that car. Minimum mandatory pit stop, therefore, for them is 80 seconds, as opposed to 65 seconds for all of the other teams. Now, moving back down, the British lineup of Dan Brown and Glyn Geddy. Now, they had a brake problem this morning, they were telling me. We did see footage of them bleeding the brakes in the interval between the 2 drivers getting in the car. They reckon they have that solved now, but it certainly hindered Glyn Geddy's opportunity in his qualifying, which of course is the lineup for the second race this weekend. Great slide. We had a wonderful picture this morning in qualifying of Van Splunteren with this car getting into a big sideways moment, John. But it's nice to see the Porsche a bit further up. The balance of performance has made them lose a bit of weight. They're 25 kilos lighter than they were.
Yes, and of course with the Porsche engine hanging over the rear axle, that's the car that should actually perform best of everybody out of these low-speed corners. Now we saw Van Splunteren giving it full throttle, and he got the car absolutely sideways. Great to look at, not ideal for a race. So weight over the rear wheels clearly will be an advantage. So things like the Audi R8s, the Mercedes on the other hand, typical of a front engine or mid-engine front engine car, that's going to suffer, I think, because A, it's a very big car, it's not maybe got quite the nimbleness of some of the other cars ahead of it, but the mid-engine or the rear engine in the case of the Porsche in reality should be the cars that look after their tyres, especially the rear tyre, best of all.
This is a new Ferrari to the series, the Scuderia Vittoria car of Giacomo Petrobelli and Carlos Giacomelli. That was going well in qualifying, as you can see. They've lined up on the 5th row, the inside of the 5th row, and then we've got another of the Mercedes SLS AMGs there, sitting Interesting thing about the Mercedes, it is a big, powerful car, but it is also the heaviest car on the grid, even in sort of standard perform before they apply the balance of performance. So lots of power, but lots of weight, and perhaps that's not the ideal combination, as well as you say, the actual layout itself.
Well, what we've seen in qualifying is that the car clearly hasn't got the level of performance that we will see or have seen on maybe more open or faster racetracks. This is not going to play to the car's strengths. Nevertheless, they're here. They've got to get the best of what they've got, and this is going to be a race of as much about stamina of your tyres as tyre management. And you may not necessarily be at the races in the opening 10 minutes, but it'll be the final lap that will be the money score.
Tell you what, in the sunshine here, in the perfect blue sky, and great camera work, it looks like we're watching a video game almost before we get into the start of this race, doesn't it? The cars look fabulous, glinting in the sunshine here at Navarra. We've enjoyed stunning weather so far. There is the M-Tech Ferrari. This is the car that is shared by Matt Griffin, but it's Duncan Cameron who will be starting this car. He did a good job in qualifying. He's on the 7th row of the grid. Just to remind you, you've got a combination of drivers here which are graded according to their experience, their past performance, as either bronze, silver or gold. If you're a bronze driver, you're less experienced, have less of a record, and you can then be combined with a gold driver. But if you're a silver rated driver, a sort of semi-pro, then you can only be teamed up with another silver. You can't have silver and gold together. So it's part and parcel of the GT3 regulations.
Yeah, and what it does is encourage what I would describe as gentlemen racing drivers, the people who don't make their living out of motor racing, but who have made a very good living, but who enjoy driving a racing car and who are extremely competent in that racing car, but they're not the professional grade driver that a gold driver would be, or maybe somebody who's dropped from gold, a bit like your sort of executive card, you get dropped from gold to silver. Not very happy about it, but we'll have to do a bit more travelling, I suspect.
There's the Graf Racing Mercedes. I notice there's a gap on the grid next to it, though, so the Ford is missing. The Fisher Racing Ford of Mikko Eskalainen and Christopher Nygaard doesn't look like it's going to be starting, which is somewhat disappointing. The only Ford actually in the lineup this weekend. There's the other DB Motorsport BMW Z4. Now Katzberg, actually the co-driver there, took pole for the second race of the weekend, but his teammate Harry Colan, who qualified for this one, could only manage a 10th row starting position. So that'll be one to watch, though, as Katzberg gets in the car later. There is the Porsche, meanwhile, the Pro Speed car of Petteri Lapalainen and Jan Halen, and now we're working our way down towards the last couple of rows, the United Autosports car of Mark Patterson and the Gravity Mercedes of Jan Stovicek.
And just talking about the faster racing BMW of Harry Colan, when Nicky Katzberg handed that car over to Matt Silverstone, they were in a comfortable leading position, but simply the pace of Herbert Voss and others around just finally overwhelmed for Harry Colan, and all that brilliant work done by Nicky Katzberg. Nicky extremely gracious afterwards and saying Harry did a brilliant job. Delighted to be in the podium nonetheless.
Yeah, so that's, as you say, though, it's part and parcel of having these different ranking drivers. Gaël Lesoudier, they had a problem with that Aston Martin in the first part of qualifying, but Maxime Martin, who got in the car for the second qualifying, which lines the car up for the second race, he was very rapid. Zach Brown here, they had a brake problem, I gather, master cylinder failure, very unusual failure, so he really didn't set a time at all, so that was unfortunate. So he's right at the back. So let's just roll up the grid with Mike Hawkins, our cameraman there, and as you can see, it's a unique way of looking at the grid and giving us some fantastic shots. So there we are, that's how we're bringing you these shots, circulating the car. It is a different way of doing it, and Mike's become a bit of a star on that thing.
Well, he's not quite as proficient as Lambert Opek, the former MP, who goes around London on a Segway. He's got handlebars in his.
Right, so the grid is beginning to clear now, and it's nice to see people are finding some shade just about by creating their own. The parasols are out, the umbrellas are up, because it is beating down, is that sun. It really is very, very intense. We've got an air temperature now of 33.5 degrees as we prepare for the cars to set off on the formation lap. That means the track temperature is now up to 47 degrees, so it's much, much warmer than when they went out to qualify. They were out at 9 o'clock, just after 9 o'clock this morning, so track was relatively cool, air temperature was still very pleasant. That car there, the white Edward Sandstrom car, the BMW, that is a new car. That I went and talked to the team briefly. They did indeed have a couple of suffered a couple of accidents at Nürburgring last week, and it was the Sundstrom car that got damaged, so they had to get another car from BMW, and it's qualified on the second row, so that's pretty good.
Can you confirm to me that they actually ran their regular race car on the 24 Hours of Nürburgring a week before coming to Spain to take part in GT3.
They did.
European Championship.
Yes, apparently they did. Yep.
Well,
the Nürburgring 24-hour race is a massive deal, of course.
It is a massive deal, and the trouble is that in process you can do damage to your car, which clearly they did, and it puts them now somewhat on the back foot, having to come in here with a car that isn't their regular car. Nevertheless, second row of the grid is a very, very good effort.
Yeah, it is very good effort, that's right. So we'll see how they get on in this one. Sundstrom already a race winner earlier on with his teammate Al Faisal. They won at Algarve the beginning of the season, and last time out the race victory, of course, at Silverstone. The second race went to Voss and Boer, and as we know, they are leading the championship, and they sit on that second row as well with their BMW. So the Z4 in fine form just about everywhere we go at the moment. Algarve, Silverstone, here at Navarra. It seems to be a very competitive proposition, but as I say, it is very open here, and we know the Lamborghini's fast, and the Ferrari, John, that 458, we've got several examples of it. The black car that's on pole position with Francesco Castellacci, he was flying this morning, wasn't he?
Yes, and in fact, his pole position lap was the quickest single lap of both the qualifying sessions, because it was Castellacci in that Ferrari partnership with Federico Leo being 0.2 of a second slower in the second qualifying segment. So the balance between your silver, your gold, your bronze is actually not that big in some cases, and particularly in that car 50, the black Ferrari on pole position, that's a very strong driver lineup.
Yeah, it is. The question is whether Nicky Melhoff there, here we are on board with him. It's great. We've got the onboard camera there in the car that will be starting on the outside of the front row, so we're going to get some very interesting shots. So it's going to be Ferrari versus Lamborghini on the run down to that first corner with the two BMWs behind, then another Ferrari of Dan Brown, and a Porsche in there as well, of course, of Paul van Splinteren. So really mixing up the marks, which is what we love to see. And remember, in GT3 they're allowed the driver aids such as ABS and traction control. They're adjustable as well. They can change the amount of traction control or indeed the amount of ABS they run with.
Well, they could do. I don't know whether the Ferrari has yet got that level of sophistication, but pretty much the rest of the field does. And that was one of the difficulties that Ferrari faced just a few moments ago.
Interesting that Thomas Enger's up on the starting position. Whether he's getting a bit of an idea as to how the start works, or whether he's been invited to go up there, but GT1 driver Thomas Enger up on the starting gantry as the grid now is closed up. That's the safety car in, and it's a little bit of a run now through a kink in the final corner before the cars actually are allowed to start the race. So let's just hope they can hold this formation up through the last bend here. Round they come. It's going to be Ferrari versus Lamborghini. The first of the two GT3 races here this weekend at Navarra about to get underway with Ferrari versus Lamborghini. The lights change and away goes the black Ferrari, squeezing the Lamborghini to the outside as they head down first of all through the kick. Watch the BMWs behind as well. One of the Mercedes trying to squeeze through on the inside. This is where it all begins to funnel down into turns 2 and 3, and immediately you see somebody running wide. The Lamborghini's got in front. The Ferrari pushed back to second. A spinner in the middle of the pack.
One of the Audi's gone round turn 2.
Yeah, one of the Audi R8s has pirouetted in the middle of the pack, but up there is Enzo Ida. That's the number 15 car that's dropped back, so now trying to get going the Sandlock car.
Paul van Splinteren, the Porsche, diving down into turn 5, makes a position. But how did the Lamborghini get so easily and quickly ahead of Castellacci in the Ferrari?
Amazing start by the Lamborghini. Getting away pretty cleanly is the Scuderia Vittoria Ferrari. I think this car must have lost a few places. This is Dan Brown, and I think he's lost a few places. He started on the third row, but I reckon he's lost a few there as we ride on board with him. And the leader's already down the end of the back straight into turn 9. It is the Lamborghini leading. There's the number 38 Ferrari, which is Giacomo Petrobelli, so he's ahead of Dan Brown. In fact, he's got a car between himself and this car, Dan Brown, which is not how they qualified, so losing out at the start there. And there's a little bit of a move. I think that might be Java Walter squeezing up the inside in the number 7 BMW, getting past the Mercedes, the number 3 car, Philippe de Gioc, and the Porsche, as you say, John, was in there as well.
One of the SLSs running very wide, coming out of turn 12. And there's a little bit of the midfield scrum that often occurs.
Yeah, it's always good fun. Dominic Baumann in the number 44 Mercedes had a poor getaway there, that car, because he started on the 4th row, but I think he's lost maybe a place or two from that. Leader crosses the line, and it's the Lamborghini that leads him. We've got a bit of a race going on. Mercedes power trying to get alongside the Ferrari and trying to squeeze past, and he's done it as they go down towards the kick. So he's gained that place, and here comes Lampalainen, but he can't quite squeeze past the number 3 Mercedes.
Well, you can see the power of the Mercedes just up the hill into turn 1 sufficiently to be able to maintain, and in the one case pass the Ferrari 458 as they fight their way into turn 2 and into turn 3 of the 2 United Autosports Audi R8 running at the tail of the field, I have to say, at the minute, 19th and 20th place.
Lampalainen squeezed out there, but managing, I think, to keep the car on track, as it all in these early laps is about trying to fight for position and just jostle, and he's got up the inside once again, and this time I think, yeah, he's managed to nip past the Audi. Up front, remember, it's the Lamborghini Gallardo that's leading this race of Niki Marmelnov. So, and into the pits is the number 4 Mercedes of Gregoire de Moustier. Contact, obviously, on that front corner. Here comes Dan Brown in the Ferrari, on another Ferrari, down the inside. I think he's done it. Yeah, they had brake problems this morning. I think the brakes were working all right that time.
Yeah, down into turn 9. That's one of the few clean overtaking spots you've got on the circuit, but you've got to get alongside to make sure you can take that corner. Otherwise, you'll have the normal situation of one car closing the door, closing gap, and then inevitably it'll be contact.
Oh, and we've got a spinner, the number 12 Mercedes of Jan Stobicek, the Gravity Charouz racing car.
Not been a great start for the Mercedes SLS. One's been in the pit lane with damage to the front, the other's stuck in the middle of the track. Will that be something little as a regional yellow flag, a localised yellow flag? We're not going to see a safety car for that, surely, much too early in the proceedings. Yeah. But the gap, 2.3 second gap, the leading Lamborghini has over the second place Ferrari. That's an enormous advantage in the opening 2 laps.
Yeah, that really is a good advantage. The Lamborghini of Marmelnov leads there from second place. The Ferrari of Castellacci. Here's a little dice coming down through the kink, but surely not. No, Talbot Volter is able to close the door on that. That was for 13th place, in fact, as they come through into turns 2 and 3. So it's the Lamborghini and Ferrari. Third place at the moment is being held by the Need for Speed BMW Z4 of Edward Sandstrom. Fourth place by race winner this year, Enzo Ida. Now then, John, let's have a look at this.
Well, it seems to be, from there, a clean start for the Ferrari. Has the advantage going up into turn 1. There's the view, but the Lamborghini's literally outpowered the Ferrari just on sheer horsepower up the very slight incline into turn 1, into turn 2. The back of behind the Ferrari, the field is, well, you can see the Audi getting spun round, but from this point, Nicholas Meyer-Meinhof in the Lamborghini is just driving away from the field.
Yeah, and Dan Brown here now. I don't know whether he got a bit of help there. He might have done. Pushed wide, and that's where he lost some of his ground. Yeah, and managed to. He was passed by the other Ferrari, which he, of course, by now he's already got back past him. So he's regained that one, but he's still down in 9th, having started 5th. So the start wasn't great for him. There's our race leader. It's still Marmelnov in the Lamborghini, and Albert Montour Taxis, who will take this car over later, said, well, if we don't win this weekend, we'll only have ourselves to blame because the car is so good around here, and that's being proved at the moment. Now, can they sustain that pace? That's the interesting thing.
Bit of bodywork coming into turn 13, turn 12.
Yeah, it's the pit entry, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, the pit entry. So there we see the rest of the field. But the last lap, 1 minute 41.3, half a second, more than half a second quicker than the second place Ferrari.
Yeah, so Marmelnov continues to open up his advantage over Castellacci and indeed over Edward Sandstrom. Looking further back there, you can see these guys really racing hard. The number 1 Porsche, the Pro Speed car, the team that won the championship last year, running in 6th place currently. 7th place is the number 45 Mercedes of Philippe Sladeka. He's flashing his lights. I was
going to say the Porsche is vulnerable on the straight bits of the circuit. Around this part of the track, the Porsche is going to be the more nimble of the car, especially on the exit of the corner, able to get its power down, and inevitably as we go through this race up until the pit stops come, tyre wear we heard from the morning qualifying, and there the United Autosports.
Mark Patterson.
Oh dear.
Yeah, unfortunately he's had a spin down at the turn 3.
That's turn 3.
Let's see, was involved with another car, unfortunately. Bosh! Into the corner they went, didn't both come out. That was Jerome Demey, I think.
Well, I mean, you know, you can't place your car on the inside and then expect the other car to disappear.
So I think they've rejoined. Meanwhile, here is the other Porsche of Lappalainen getting up the inside of Talbot Volter. These guys, as I say, are fighting for sort of 13th, 14th places. And Lappalainen's actually gained a couple of places on this lap, I think. Although the Aston has also just recently gone past that BMW. I think it's struggling a bit. Talbot Volter not really showing the sort of pace we might have expected. Meanwhile, there's the number 21 Ferrari of Duncan Cameron, car he shares with Matt Griffin. That's running in 12th currently, but he's under attack at the moment from one of the Mercedes, as our race leader is just disappearing into the distance. 4 seconds his advantage, and there's the man who'll take that car over. They've had so much bad luck this year. They'll be crossing their fingers, crossing everything that they can hold on to this.
Well, they will certainly want to have a quick, within the regulation time, clean pit stop, and Albert von Tunnen Taxis, when he gets in, is going to have, I suspect, a fairly big responsibility to take that car, assuming it returns to the field in the lead.
That Ferrari just been passed, sorry John, but by that Mercedes with the pink mirrors there. That car has actually been going pretty well. Philippe Giog is going quite well at the moment, so we'll keep an eye on him, managing to get past the Ferrari 458.
Yeah, Duncan Campbell really maybe not quite up to the speed, certainly not of his teammate Matt Griffin, who will no doubt get into that car and drag it back to the front. But in the meantime, Duncan Campbell is the young Duncan Cameron, not Duncan Campbell, Duncan Cameron, as the bronze driver, is doing the best he can, and this is going to be a real test, not only of his ability but of his fitness. This is a tough physical circuit, and the heat will also be something that will get to the driver.
So we've got one Ferrari 458 sitting in second at the moment, and then these two cars, which are pretty much together on track, 9th and 10th. Dan Brown being chased still by Giacomo Petrobelli. Nothing to choose between them, and Lynn Geddy will be taking this car over later in the race, no doubt watching nervously to see how far Dan can move up the order. There is our race leader with no sign at the moment of second place car behind him, Castellacci. Let's see what the gap is this time. It was 4.0 seconds, believe it or not, last time around, with only 4 laps completed. He's now completing lap 5, and we just have to wait and wait and wait. Look in the background, there's your second place Ferrari, 5.2. He's gained another second on that one lap alone, 1.2 seconds.
Well, I mean, it's just so easy right now for Nicholas Meyer-Manhoff in the lead Lamborghini. I mean, he's lapping up, and that last lap he lapped over a second, a lap quicker than the second place Ferrari. I'm slightly surprised. I didn't think in race configuration that the Lamborghini was going to have this pace, but clearly it has, and it's pulling away extremely easily.
The one to watch might be the BMW, currently sitting in third, which is catching the Ferrari in second. So we'll keep an eye on that as we'll also watch these guys. Chubba Walter into the pits. Looks as though they could be having, puncture front right. So he seemed to slow down. He was in the mix. Maybe that tyre's been letting down gradually over the last lap or two.
Well, certainly they weren't running where we would normally expect, and no doubt as a consequence of that, that's spoiled their sprint race.
So there's the Ferrari in second, the black car, and then he's being caught a little bit by that BMW of Edward Sundstrom. Then there's a little gap to Enzo Ida in the Audi, chased by Voss, the championship leader. These two Ferraris are hard at it again, now trying to come down the outside as Petrobelli. Dan Brown's got a bit deep into the goal. They actually made contact there.
And damage to the left front guard, and that's where the Dan Brown took that place away from the Ferrari behind some 5 laps ago, or 4 laps ago as it was. And they were trying to redress that situation. And again, you can't go for a closing gap. There's a point at which you've got to decide. Here they come down the inside. There was room left. Dan Brown did leave a bit of room, but now you can see what's happened. There's a small amount of damage to the outside of the left front corner on that Ferrari, and no doubt that's not going to get any better.
A couple of 100,000 apiece at least in GT3 spec, and
they're back at it again.
Yeah, they're back at it again. So these two cars giving us a great display, and of course very evenly matched, being an identical Ferrari 458, new on the GT3 scene this year, but it's a car that is being developed all the time. Has to run in pretty much standard trim in GT3. You're not allowed to do a lot to the cars over the road car, but it is a pretty amazing road car, so let's just watch that closely.
Interestingly, for the first time since this race began, 11 minutes ago, we have seen the lead car lap slower than the second place car, and it's lapping slower than the third place car. So the BMW of Sundstrom is actually the quickest car on the track right now, and the gap between second and third, well, it's 1.1 seconds. The gap between second and first, 5.1 seconds.
Yeah, that is a good point. De Moustier into the pits, there must be problems there. The car in third, the white car, is on Dunlop tyres, so may have slightly different reaction to track temperatures and to longevity in this race. And as you say, at the moment, that Dunlop tyred BMW is looking quite threatening. BMW's no change. Brown still chased by Petrobelli, and then behind them in 11th place we've got the number 11 Mercedes. That's Leonid Maczynski sharing the car with Jarek Janis. So things are beginning to settle down just a little bit now as we work our way through the first stage of this 1 hour race. There's second and third, Castellacci versus Edward Sundstrom. And as you say, John, maybe a little bit closer again.
I think Sundstrom's the car to watch this leading trio of cars. He's closed up to the tail of the Ferrari. the gap that was 5.1 seconds between first and second now is 5.6. So the Lamborghini has responded, and in fact Castellacci lost time, probably now thinking more as Dan Brown's gone round.
But then was there any contact? You remember how close
Well, that was coming on to start-finish straight, turn 15.
He and Petrobelli were tied together, weren't they? Or did he just get on the power a bit hard? Or I wonder what happened there. I don't know whether we'll get a chance to see it, but he's got back going again. That's going to be a bit of a blow. Where's he crossed the line? In 14th place. So yeah, and he's actually lost behind the other Ferrari. Let's take a look.
Turns in, bash from the back, got a clip from behind, and there it is. Well, that was as rude as you could expect.
Two Ferraris, I mean, for goodness sake, two cars. I know they're different teams, but even so, it seems a bit crazy that the two Ferraris are getting into it like this.
You might describe them as they were best. I mean, there's just, again, no chance. That's an avoidable incident, and the problem is that Dan Brown is penalised by having the spin. He's lost the positions, and the other Ferrari goes through cleanly, effectively, after a small touch, and well, we wait to see whether the stewards might look at that as being a avoidable incident. There's a bit of action further down the field.
Yeah, well, I guess he's going to be... There is the car that actually was involved in that, but kept going. So it might be spoiled. And there's a spin for... No, that's actually Duncan Cameron. That's the number 21 car, isn't it? So that's Duncan Cameron who's had a spin. Might have been on his own on that section of track.
Yeah, I think that's sort of turn 6.
Yeah, that's
strange.
Right.
Haven't seen a car off that part of the track so far.
He was running in 12th, and I think he had a little bit of margin over the Mercedes that was behind him, but anyway, he's got going again. So the Ferrari's not having it all their own way in this one. There is still that black car in second, but look how much closer the BMW is now.
Well, the BMW is lapping about half a second, 0.6 of a second quicker on that last lap. In fact, the response from the lead Lamborghini has seen that lead now extend to 6.2 seconds. And the Ferrari struggling, and there it is. I could see it coming.
Where does he go?
We had to go a long way, but the Ferrari was very slow in turn 2 and 3, and you could see the back of the car was groaning, lack of grip, and then it just popped around almost in slow motion.
There seems to be Ferrari fever out there at the moment. It's 3 of the 4 cars that we've seen in a spin or half spin in the last lap.
Remember, I mentioned earlier that, let's look again, you see oversteer going into turn 2. That didn't help. He came off the curb, got a little bit of dirt on the tyres, and that is very rubbery offline, and that contributed to the car going around. Now remember, the Ferraris, from what we understand, have not got the level of sophistication in their traction control as other cars, BMW, others in the field. So that no doubt has contributed to the problems that Ferrari are maybe facing here in these fiercely hot conditions.
Pretty impressive acceleration when he did get going again, though, because he still managed to stay in front of the other car.
Yeah, but also he laid rubber doing it.
Yeah.
So all he's doing is burning up more and more the rear tyre. But the problem started entering into turn 2. The back end of the car got away from Castellacci. That put him slightly wide, put him over the dirtier part of the track, and then the rest was history.
Now, meanwhile, Herbert Voss in this car, the other BMW, is certainly putting Enzo Ida under some pressure for 4th place, that is. As we look back to the other Ferrari, the number 38 car, that's running down in 10th place. Had that little contact earlier on, of course, with Dan Brown. He's chased by the number 3 Mercedes, which is certainly got the horsepower, Philippe Gioc, but can it get the speed it needs through the corners? Meanwhile, we see 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th place cars coming through, and Voss has got ahead of Ide there, hasn't he? I think so, yeah.
Yes, he has. Ide was in 4th, he's now back to 5th.
So the BMW leading the championship, the white one, has gained a place. Let's see how he did it. Up the inside.
Very clean, very nice, sweet little pass up the inside, and just takes that position away into the turn 15, the final turn. Maybe caught slightly napping, not maybe appreciating the closing speed of Herbert Voss in the Z4 BMW.
So good move by the championship leaders. They've gained a place, but remember, they have got a longer pit stop to deal with that BMW, so they need to make as much ground as possible in order to be able to do something. And you're right about the incident between the 2 Ferraris being investigated. It's just flashed up onto our timing screen, so the stewards are saying they'll investigate that after the race.
Just only watching again the tail of the Ferrari coming through turn 8, back end of the car, not willing to accept throttle, and that is going to be the story, I think, of the 458s this afternoon, is they're going to find themselves with less and less rear grip, and as other cars come through the field who have got this, as I call it, more sophisticated traction control, they're just going to eat the Ferraris up.
Yeah, well, that could happen. Last time around, all the lap times dropping off a little bit on the last lap. Might have been because there were yellows out there. There is Van Splunteren in car number 1. He's running 6th, still being chased by the number 45 Mercedes. And then this little race that's going on, this is right towards the back of the field, in fact. That's Zach Brown, the second of those two cars. We saw incidents earlier on for both these cars, but they're still in the race and they're still having a little dice themselves. The Audis have been given a little bit bigger restrictors for this weekend, so a little bit more horsepower. First of the Audis in this race is the number 33 car, which is currently running in 5th position. Leader has got his gap up to 10 seconds now. My goodness, that Lamborghini is just flying.
Well, I thought Sandstrom and the BMW might have been, and the Porsche and Mercedes off at turn 2 into 3. The Mercedes again in all sorts of trouble. Another of the Mercedes from the same team about to gobble it up. And rear tyres again turning into the corner, no rear grip, oversteer, and that drags you on. But I thought that white BMW would have been closing down. In fact, it's losing ground to the lead Lamborghini of Nicholas Meyer-Mayhoff.
Yeah, that's right. That is a real surprise. There is Van Splunteren in the Porsche car. He's sharing with Maxime Soulet, the Belgian. They're lying on 17th in the championship at the moment, way down the field compared to what they did last year, because they were dicing for race victories last season. Well, Van Splunteren was, with a different co-driver on that occasion, and won the team's championship. Not showing that pace at the moment, that's for sure, but the balance of performance changes might help them. There is Petrobelli, and still being kept pretty honest by Philippe Giac in the Mercedes, the Graf Racing car, the team that ran Corvette very successfully last year, but has been one of the teams to make the switch to the Mercedes SLS AMG. And here at Navarra, as we can see, it's not quite so well suited, but you have to say they've got the consistency, whereas the Ferraris do seem to be struggling a bit. There is our race leaders, crossed the line at the end of 11 laps. What's the gap going to be this time? Still extending it, I think.
Well, they said it was 10 seconds as we came across the line on the last occasion, and 10.3 seconds.
Yep, absolutely. So still very strong, and still managing to pull away at the moment. So Van Splunteren across the line, and then the two Mercedes directly behind, and then look at that behind that, the Ferrari really having to work hard to stay in position here as Gioc moves to the outside with the Mercedes. He's got the horsepower, but he hasn't got position.
But watch the Ferrari when he gets into turn 2. Is the back end of the car stable? It was unstable to me, and it's all over the shop, and he's really having to fight to keep that car in position.
Really close indeed, trying to work it out, but there is Glyn Geddy, who will be taking over from Dan Brown in the other Ferrari, the car that got knocked back down earlier on.
In the meantime, the Ferrari's still struggling to get the back end in control. The Mercedes doing likewise into turn 6.
So there is Castellacci. He's in third position now, of course. Voss still behind him. There's Van Splunteren. The two Mercedes come through. Still this dice going on between Ferrari and Mercedes, mid-engine versus front engine. The Ferrari having to go
weaving.
one way than the other.
A mistake, weaving down the inside, forcing the Mercedes into a mistake. And again, that's something the stewards might choose to look at, because you're allowed to make one move to make a block on a car trying to overtake. But I think he used more than one in that attempt, and of course forced the Mercedes to go unstable. Watch what happened. He's got to make an avoiding move. Car gets unstable, can't slow down on the dirty inside line, and the Ferrari retains its position. But that will not be looked on too favourably by the stewards.
No, thankfully there was no damage done, but I suppose that's part of the fun of GT3 racing, is you're going to see drivers doing things that you wouldn't expect to see in GT1.
We might see something happening shortly.
Yeah, we might do here. This is the race for third place, and there's your championship leader, number 35, Herbert Voss, closing up on that Castellacci Ferrari, which we know he seems to be struggling with, having had that half spin earlier on. And he's really all over the back of that car now. The question is, where can he find a slot to slide that BMW down the inside?
If he can stay close through turn 5 and up into turn 6, but he isn't close enough. The Ferrari can consolidate, but he's certainly going to have a look. And the problem that Ferrari have got, the BMW drives up the inside. Ferrari couldn't hold the corner. BMW drives up the inside, takes the position away, sweet as a nut.
Lovely move, taking full advantage, although he gets into a slide at the next turn, but holds it well. These two both won races at Silverstone, both of these cars, and now they're dicing hard in this one, but the BMW's taken the advantage into third place. Remember, they will have a longer pit stop, so you might see these two cars having to swap again later.
Well, we've got about 3 minutes before the pit lane opens, so who's going to be the first to dive in? the gap first to second was 10.7 seconds. There we see into turn and out of turn 6. Absolutely classy overtake when your competitor is struggling for grip.
So the Lamborghini Gallardo leads this race. Albert von Turner Taxis is going to be taking over very soon. I wonder how he's feeling. Let's hear from him.
Albert, will you be able to fight off that BMW?
I sure hope so. Be aware, he's running on Dunlop tires, which are harder than the tires that we are working with. So, especially under these conditions, the tires should get better and better to the end of the race. So, it's definitely going to be tough, but Nicky has done a job that really just words cannot express. And I hope people are aware of what he's doing out there, what a promising young driver he is. Respect.
Thank you, Albert.
Respect indeed. Nicky holding on well out in front. Here he is with that 10-second advantage, but as Albert points out, the car currently in second place behind them is on the Dunlop tyre.
It's interesting, the lap time of this lead car tends to be fluctuating. It's about half a second or so a lap, and in fact right now the Sandstrom BMW in second place, who we saw that overtake a few minutes ago, is running again marginally quicker. They've got the length of the back straight, which is about 500 metres, maybe a little bit more. And as we see, Albert von Turner Taxis getting his balaclava on, and then very shortly, the lead Lamborghini will be available to come in just over a minute and three quarters, and the pit lane will be open.
Third, fourth, and fifth place cars run through. There's Enzo Ida, and then a little bit gap back to Van Splunteren in the Porsche, still chased by
drive through for car 11.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Incident with car 38.
Right, so number 11 is the Gravity Charouz Mercedes-Benz. So I'm quite sure what that incident was.
Well, that's with the Ferrari.
Yeah, that was the one that got squeezed.
It is. I'm
I
surprised.
don't quite understand that.
No, nor do I. I think it should be the other way around. Car 38 should be penalised for the incident. Maybe there's something we have not seen in other cameras there. Zach Brown again having a difficult day in the Audi R8 and about to become... Oh, it's a rear puncture. Yeah. Rear puncture, left rear. Where did that one come from? There it is. You can see already the car, back end of the car, the tyres actually trying to separate from the rim. And Zach Brown's trying to get the car back to the pits as quickly as possible. That is actually after the incident what caused that rear... Right, oh, there we go. It had gone down, and that's the replay of the incident. He's now going to make his way back to the pits.
See in the background, that's
there it is,
just
bumping its way around. That was out of turn 9, just the most distant point from the pit lane.
So he's got to limp his way back, but as you say, that's a long way to come, so that's going to drop him even further back. At least the pit window might have opened by that point, so at least he can combine it with the actual pit stop they have to do, as Albert von Turner Taxis gets ready to take over the Lamborghini, which has got that 10.8 second lead. And remember, when they make pit stops, it's not like GT1, it's not furiously against the clock. They have to sit in the pits for a minimum time of 65 seconds, so there shouldn't be a mad rush. There's plenty of time to do it. The United Autosports car almost made it back to pit lane. He's just got to get around this next section.
And pit window is now open, so already cars are making their way in. The Lamborghini stays out, goes another lap, so I don't know whether Nicholas Meyer-Meinhof will stay out to the last possible moment. It'll all depend on what his lap times will compare to those with fresh rubber and also a fresh driver. But as long as Meyer-Meinhof is doing a good job, he's in the rhythm, then why spoil that? Wait, make the change later rather than sooner.
So Java Volta's going to hand over to Claudia Hurtgen in the number 7 BMW. I couldn't quite see if... so Sandstrom has stayed out there at the moment, so no change to the top two. Voss has just crossed the line in third, so he's not come in, but has come in is the Ferrari of Castellacci and the Audi of Enzo Ide. So we have seen some of the front runners, but not the actual leaders into the pits at this earliest opportunity. So there we go. Into the pits is Enzo Ide, handing over to Greg Franke, who's getting all set to go. Winners at Algarve, they had a fantastic pit stop, but it was because they timed it well. When the pit window opened, they were a bit lucky because they were able to get in at the earliest opportunity under safety car, and they made it work for them. BMW's back on its way, and on the speed limiter as they head down the pit lane, also followed out by the number 11 Mercedes. That was Leonid Machitsky.
So just waiting for the Ferrari, was the pole sitter waiting for the clock to tick before they can release that car back into the field.
possibly being held off a bit, the Lamborghini up front, in behind the United Autosport Audi, into the pits, the Aston Martin. Max Martin will be fast in that number 9 car, so keep an eye on that in the remaining part of this race.
So it's now Federico Leo's gone out in the Ferrari, followed by the Porsche.
And the race leader stayed out still, just past the pit lane entry again.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's no reason to bring him in until the last moment. And you know, if your driver in the lead is doing a good job, it's all about keeping the momentum, keeping the rhythm, and he's able to do that, and then hand over the car to Albert Montoya Taxis and let him bring it home. Hopefully to a podium, but even more, in the case of Albert, to win the event. Yeah,
that's what he wants. Into the pits has come the other United Autosports car. Mark Patterson handing over to Joe Osborne.
He's been dragged out. Yeah. Joe getting into the car, but Mark Patterson being dragged out of that car.
And other cars joining from the pit lane into that fast right-hander.
It's an interesting pit lane exit because it concludes just before turn 1, which is a flat-out quickest corner on the circuit. So cars are obviously taking a racing line, and if you get somebody coming out of the pit lane hard on it, it could be an interesting side-by-side through a corner where there's really only a single line.
Petrobelli there in the Ferrari hasn't stopped yet, so that's brought him up to 4th. So he's gaining places, but of course he's got to still make his pit stop. Meanwhile, there in the pit lane, the number 44 Mercedes, the Heiko car, Bryce Bosey and Dominic Baumann. Baumann handing over to Bosey now, as we wait to see whether the Lamborghini is still going to stay out there for a little longer. Still has a 10-second lead over the BMW of Edward Sandstrom. Neither of them have yet been into the pit lane. They're falling out of the car by the looks of it is Leonid Machitsky as Thomas Kostka takes over.
So the Lamborghini coming up towards the completion, yet another lap, and it'll not be very long before we see. Oh, and he powers it. Nicholas Meyer-Manhoff powers it into the pit lane. I think he was a bit enthusiastic on the throttle, thinking he'll line it up and launch it. There's the line where they've got to get down to speed, down to obey it. And you listen, the car shudders and judders all the way through. A very slow, sharp turn into the pit lane itself.
Let's just take a look at that slide once again. Oh, nice control there in the Gallardo. Not really what you expect to see the race leader doing as he's about to come in the pits, but nonetheless.
Getting out of the car. He's already in the pit lane, and Albert Montoya Taxis now into the car. The seat belts will be readjusted and attached, and that car will shortly be back on its way as this car now takes over the lead.
Yeah, takes over the lead. They haven't stopped yet, so you can see they're keeping the coolers on that car. That's very sensible, because obviously they get a lot of heat sink, particularly in these type of temperatures, and that heat sink can cause brake problems when you go back out as the second driver, so they're trying to keep a bit of air on them.
It's a good job by Meyer-Manhoff to bring that car in. It had a 10-second advantage. In fact, it was very tight. Oh dear me! Just there you can see frustration. That cost them maybe a second, but the frustration mixed with the adrenaline, having done a superb first stint.
Every emotion going on there, but Nicky did a great job there, so he's pretty happy overall. So still some cars rejoining. There is the Gallardo now joining in, but we know that Sandstrom, his nearest rival, hasn't yet stopped, so we're going to have to wait for the BMWs of Sandstrom and of Voss to make their pit stops. They haven't done so as yet. To see, did he actually clip the car with the back in the end?
Just as the rear wings, it's the rear wing to rear wing. He did, yes.
Just touched it.
Yes, the end plate to end plate, and that's something you've got to remember when you're doing a tight pit stop, is that the front of the car is not necessarily the widest part of the car. Not sufficient to do any damage to either car in real terms. Nevertheless, it's always a concern to know that parts of the rear wing have had contact with another car, and therefore just keep an eye on it.
So there's our race leader, and we wait to see. That was third place in, so we are seeing the other guys come in. He was in second before that because he hadn't stopped, so that was Voss coming in and Sandstrom staying out. So Sandstrom's still out there on track. His co-driver Al Faisal wasn't as quick this morning, Sandstrom, in qualifying, so presumably they want to go as deep as possible into the race, whereas Voss handing over to Den Boer, there's not so much difference between these two.
No, they're not, but certainly the difference between Sandstrom and Al Faisal is going to be significant. So you leave your man out in the reality as long as you can, assuming everything's going well. Lap times are competitive. Now you've got to do the driver change, you've got to connect the radiator, there's a drinks bottle. You can see the tie cables that pull those seat belts back to enable the driver exiting the car to do so cleanly, and for the driver entering the car not to sit on the belt, which is sometimes often can can happen.
So here was the man who, the car that was leading before the pit stops, and there's the car one of the cars they were racing against. Remember, it was in third place before it came in, but this car has